Today I will make sense of an activity show satire film called Big Brother. Keep an eye out and fare thee well. Henry has gotten back to Hong Kong subsequent to serving in the U.S. military for quite a long time. Hoping to begin a profession as an educator, he goes to his previous school, Tai Chi optional. The chief notes that he doesn't have insight in educating. Yet, in the wake of being shown a suggestion letter from a higher authority, he is given the work. Previously, Henry leaves. The chief illuminates him that the class he is relegated to instruct is the most awful one of their school. The morning of his most memorable day at school, Henry strolls into the class to see that it is an outright mayhem. A few understudies are doozing, others are singing, some are playing computer games, while a lot of them are cooking ramen on a compact oven. Indeed, even after the educator strolls in, they totally overlook him and proceed with what they are doing. Henry attempts to get their consideration, yet they claim to not hear him. He offers up attempting to redirect their consideration and circumvents the study hall, remarking on the things they are now doing. The understudies who are cooking are approached to eat less ramen on the grounds that it contains an excessive amount of sodium. Henry then, at that point, moves toward a person named Zufa playing ukulele and assists him with it. Likewise, he cautions a gamer youngster against the radiation he could get from gazing at the screen day in and day out. At the point when the understudies at last beginning paying attention to him, he presents himself and composes his name and telephone number on the board. The understudies chuckle, since his penmanship is appalling. Then, at that point, somebody from the understudies calls him and requests that he leave the class, yet Henry dismisses it. The kids disregard him once more and go on with the exercises they were doing before his appearance. Having enough of it, Henry utilizes an elastic band and chalk to set off the fire sprinkler in the room. The understudies immediately spread out to hold themselves back from getting wet. He at last stands out enough to be noticed and authoritatively invites them to his group. After class, a gathering of 5 most minimal positioning understudies accumulates in the game supply room to smoke. The head of the gathering, Jack, has a keen interest in A-grade understudy from another class. The others find him gazing at her image and ridicule him. The gathering has a competition with the rich and ruined kids from the school's ball group. They go into the inventory room and fake Jack as expected in light of the fact that he is poor. Afterward, the b-ball group is rehearsing while Jack and the gathering watch them from adjacent. Jack drops a container to the court, which influences the group chief to fall. The gathering giggles, however, is given detainment by the school's English educator, Miss Liang. To keep away from detainment, they pull a trick on her and take off when she is caught up with cleaning her work area. Somewhere else, the school's chief is bothered on the grounds that the training board is intending to deduct 1/5 of their yearly financing. Individuals from the board come to take a visit through the school to examine where the assets are being utilized. Simultaneously, Henry enters the homeroom where the understudies have set up a can of water to trick him. However, his reflexes work quicker than the falling container and he can drive it away. The understudies, who have been holding on to ridicule him, are left stunned. Henry requests Jack's bundle of cigarettes. Realizing that he smokes, Jack just gives him the pack, inquisitive concerning what he is going to do. Then, at that point, Henry requests that Zufa name the 3 fixings that are in a cigarette. At the point when he responds to the inquiry accurately, he is led to play hooky for the afternoon. Everybody begins to beat on their work areas, requesting that they ought to get to play hooky too. At the point when they stop, he gives them every one of the cigarette and requests that they investigate it. That's what Henry knows. Whether he just notices the impact it has on their well-being, they won't view it in a serious way. So, all things being equal, he asks them about the results of smoking cigarettes and makes sense of how tar structures in their lungs. Interestingly, they focus on the educator and are really keen on learning. After the chime rings, he requests that they return the cigarettes, and the understudies hesitantly concur. That day in the cafeteria, the chief of the b-ball group makes one of Jack's companion, Bruce, stumble on his leg. This leads to a contention between the gatherings, which soon transforms into a battle. They toss food and tables at one another, obliterating the spot. Afterward, Henry is educated that 5 understudies from his group have been briefly suspended for beginning the battle. Henry finds Jack battling his rival in the passage and stops them. On being approached to quiet down, Jack blames the school for being out of line in light of the fact that the rich children get no discipline. That day after school, Henry goes through the documents of every one of the 5 understudies to figure out additional about them. The primary person is named Zufa, the child of a Pakistani foreigner who is constantly oppressed in view of his race. He is much of the time blamed for taken by the cops in his area. Zufa's just desire in his life is to turn into a performer. The subsequent understudy is a young lady named Dina. She was a failure to her dad, since her introduction to the world since he generally needed a child. Her whole life, Denon has been attempting to acquire her dad's regard. She even trimmed her hair to a more limited length and played with vehicles to claim to be a kid. However, her dad couldn't care less about her while he deals with her more youthful sibling like a sovereign. Then, there are siblings named Bruce and Chris. Their mom took off with a man when they were just children, which transformed their dad into a drunkard. The siblings just had one another to depend on while growing up. Bruce became fixated on computer games to get away from the real world, while Chris really buckled down in a supermarket to bring in cash for the family. Ultimately, Henry can find no data about Jack's family foundation. In the accompanying scene, we see Jack working at a cafe as a server, and MMA better Jenny shows up at the eatery with his colleagues. When Jenny isn't looking, Jack takes his extravagant lighter he has gotten. Jenny's men beat him up as he really looks at Jack's ID. In the wake of figuring out that he is an understudy, he gives him a few cash and offers him a task as their food conveyance man. Elsewhere, Henry visits Zufa's home and finds him taking off from his dad and his partners in the wake of taking a ticket. He helps him at first, yet in the wake of figuring out why he is being pursued, he agrees with the dad's position. Then he and Zufa come to hang out at the span. To rouse Zufa into doing anything he desires, Henry sings with a band performing in the roads. Seconds after the fact, Zufa goes along with him and sings before individuals interestingly, subsequent to being harassed at school quite a while back. In the meantime, Bruce and Chris' dad gets back home, late like generally, and orders them to present to him a Lager from the store. At the point when the siblings reject, he hollers at them to escape his home. The following day, Henry meets with their dad and persuades him to get help for his children's prosperity. Meanwhile, Denon's dad brings her a pack of cosmetics items and requests that she carry on like a young lady for once. Denon is enraged at him for continuously causing her to feel like she is inadequate. She puts on the cosmetics on her more youthful sibling and slips away the house with the vehicle key. She's going to drive away in her dad's vehicle, however, is come by Henry at the right second. He tells her that driving without a permit is unlawful and recommends another option. Following that, they go to a go-kart racetrack. Henry likewise welcomes her dad and makes them race. The dad and girl go for the kill to one another during the race and ultimately end up external the track. Out of nowhere, Denon's go-kart is hit by a vehicle, yet she figures out how to evade it. Uninformed about this, her dad cries, grieving his girl's passing. Denon understands that he really does truth be told love her and embraces him. The following day at school, Bruce and Chris, alongside a gathering, are shipped off a recovery community to meet with a recuperating alcoholic. They are shocked to see that the individual they need to talk with is their dad. The understudies ask him how he began to drink. The man answers that he adored his better half truly, yet she left him at the absolute bottom of his life. Thus, he began to drink and failed to remember that he had 2 children to take care of. The man doesn't uncover that Bruce and Chris are his children, yet apologizes to them. By its finish, the siblings are left crying. Elsewhere, Jack has begun to work for the MMA better Jennying. He offers Jack large chunk of change to medicate a warrior's beverage in the following game. Jack is hesitant, however, is constrained into tolerating the proposition. Upon the arrival of the battle, Jennying supports a warrior, however, wagers cash on his misfortune. Jack puts drugs on the warrior's beverage, yet has gotten wild doing as such. Before he can fault Jennying, he is thrashed and locked inside a storage. Sometime later, Henry shows up there and inquires as to whether they have seen his understudy. The men request that he get back, however, Jack, from inside the storage, shouts for help. Subsequent to finding Abbey is being caught, Henry assaults them and overwhelms them without any problem. At the point when the warriors step it gets a piece extreme, however, Henry evades their assaults effectively. Toward its finish, he takes out their best warrior, who should contend in no time flat. In the accompanying scene, they are at the clinic where Henry gets treated for his injuries. Jack attempts to uncover reality with regards to Jennying, yet is made to quiet down. The news comes to the TV and Henry begins being known as the one who beat up an expert warrior to save his understudy. His prevalence in school develops and the understudies begin to regard him. They even outfit to invite him to the class, rather than how they were before. A flashback shows us that Henry used to be a jokester when he was in school. He even tossed water inflatables at an understudy who was playing piano for the Guardians in an occasion. Afterward, he battled a similar understudy and broke his hand. He was suspended for the battle, after which he needed to travel to the States. Beginning that day, the understudies focus when Henry shows in class and concentrate hard for the impending school entrance test. Everybody is doing perfect, aside from Bruce, who has become dependent to pills. It ends up that while Chris went to video games to keep away from his family's concern, Bruce began taking medications. Since he is unfocused, He does gravely in the fake entrance test. Henry vows to help him, yet Bruce develops more discouraged with time. At last, he leaps off the gallery of their home. He is raised to the medical clinic and goes into a state of insensibility. The media winds the news and faults it on the school and Henry for what Bruce did. The authorities from the instruction board interview Henry and choose to disavow his educating permit. At the point when he packs his things and leaves the school, the understudies pursue him behind, requesting that he remain. They are shattered by his non-attendance, yet they realize that they ought to expert their impending test to do right by him. From that day, they concentrate on 2 times as difficult to demonstrate to the load-up that Henry is a decent instructor. Upon the arrival of the test, Jack, alongside the entirety of his colleagues, get a text from Henry requesting that they meet in the school an hour prior to the test. At the point when the understudies assemble, they figure out that it was Janning's stunt to keep them bound in the school, so they won't come to the assessment lobby in time. He is doing this to show Henry a thing or two. Sometime later, Henry shows up at school and looks into Janning's arrangement. Aldi lets the understudies free and battles Janning's kin to prevent them from hurting the youngsters. They escape and immediately advance toward the assessment corridor while Henry battles Janning. While they are battling one-on-one, Janning uncovers that he was the person who Henry had tossed water inflatables at when he was close to nothing. It would seem since Henry broke his arm, he couldn't contend in a major music rivalry. Since the occurrence, he hasn't contacted a piano and faults Henry for demolishing his fantasy. Henry attempts to dissuade him, yet is gone after once more. They battle to snag a blade. Finally, Henry gets a pursuit to kill him, however, doesn't do it. He requests mercy for what he did when he was pretty much nothing and leaves. The understudies arrive at the assessment corridor with flawless timing and complete the test.